Welcome back, everybody, to the Now What podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Arian Foster. We want to thank Smarty Pants for being a sponsor title to the Now What podcast. They continue to produce the best vitamins on earth, so pick you up some of those. Right now, we have a legend that needs zero introduction. My man, Tony Hawk, is in the building.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, man. I apologize. I made you drive down on this Wednesday morning. But it's a beautiful drive.
Oh, it's no problem. Hey, we're in San Diego. I can't complain. Anything that's in my hometown, I'm okay with.
For sure, man. So, I was doing a lot of research just to kind of prep for this, man. And you really forget sometimes how big and legendary people are until you go back and kind of dig up some of those the accolades that you have achieved over your lifetime.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure. You've become you become iconic, man. And so I kind of wanted to start like the origins of like skateboarding, because it was really interesting to me how that began. If you don't mind talking about that.
Sure. That's up for debate of what the origins of actual skateboarding are. You know,
really?
A lot of people will take credit and say, "Oh, well, I used it for moving furniture," whatever it was, you know what I mean,
right.
or the first creation of a skateboard. So I can't really vouch for that. But when I got into it, it was already somewhat established as a toy, and people were using it for transportation. You know, the folklore was that surfers were skating when the waves were flat.
Right.
And I believe that just in terms of why it sort of went into empty swimming pools, because they were just trying to emulate surfing and surfing waves, and swimming pools were the closest thing to that. And so there was a drought in California in the 70s, and there were all these empty swimming pools, and the surfer skaters found that as like this huge empty playground, basically,
right.
And started sort of creating this style and realizing that they could do these sort of aerial maneuvers out of the pool. And I skated a little bit around that time because my brother was a surfer and he was into it.
Right.
And so I'm just more speaking from my history, but when there were two types of skating then. There were the pool skaters, who were the cool guys, the Dogtown crew, and then there were freestylers, and the freestylers were the guys that were just sort of doing pirouettes and dances. And,
right.
You know what I mean? It wasn't street skating the way we know it now. It was literally like more like dance.
I was watching the documentary about Dogtown's Z-Boys,
Yeah.
and that's what really it's really interesting. I didn't think it was gonna. I mean, it pulled me in like I didn't think it was gonna pull me in, because it went into exactly that thing.
Yeah, and so for me as a kid, like I wanted to be cool. I wanted to skate the pools. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I didn't want to do the pirouettes and do the choreography. I was just more like I wanted to, and I eventually, after about a year of skating, sort of just cruising the neighborhood and skating little wooden quarter pipes and stuff, I got an invite to go to the skate park with a friend of mine.
Right.
And I went to the skate park and I literally saw people flying out of swimming pools. And I was like, that's it.
That's it.
That's what I want to do. I want to do at any cost.
Right.
I want to do that. And I devoted myself to it basically, and, quit playing basketball, quit playing baseball. Mostly just because it was interfering with the time I could go to the skate park.
Right. No, it's interesting, like the origins. That's why I asked about the origins, because the culture of skateboarding is kind of like this.
Sorry.
No, you're good. It's kind of like this anti-culture, you know? And
yeah. Well, especially back then, to be a skater, you had to be somewhat rebellious, just because it wasn't established. It wasn't considered cool.
Right.
And it was like, if you chose to do it and you loved it, then you had to pride yourself on, well, this is what sets me apart. This is what, I'm doing something that most people don't understand or want to know about. And you had to sort of believe in yourself, and you found these pockets of other skaters and you really identified with them. And they were all, they came from all walks of life. They came from a lot of different, a lot of challenged backgrounds as well.
Right.
And we had our own little sort of group of misfits at the skate park, and I loved it. Like, it really did give me this identity, and there was a whole new wave literally of music coming through, and punk, and then people were just like doing it themselves, and it was like this whole explosion of creativity that I fell in love with, that felt huge at the time, but when you look back on it, it was a really small contingent of people.
Right. I mean, yes and no. It probably started out that way, and then it grew into a multi-billion-dollar industry, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I'm talking about like the early '80s. There were literally 4 or 5 skate parks across the country.
Oh yeah.
And that's where things were happening.
Right.
And luckily, I grew up in San Diego, where one of them remained.
Right. I mean, that's what's interesting to me is like you guys started this thing. Well, it started and then it made its comeback like in the '80s. You guys kind of made it regained its fervor with the half pipe. Am I correct with that? And
half pipes were just emulating pool skating.
Yeah.
You know, we it was more like, hey, we don't have to skate these things that are actually meant for swimming. We can create our own version of that's more skatable, and that's what half pipes were.
Right. No, it's so interesting to me because as I get older as a man, I see like because I was a part of the young crowd at one point where I'm transitioning out of that now. But the young crowd is always viewed by the older crowd as kind of disruptive and what are they doing? And every era kind of comes out of that, and there's like a documentary that comes out like how brilliant those people were.
Right. Yeah.
And you guys were that of your era.
Yeah, and at the time it did feel very it felt like a struggle, mostly because there was no acceptance, there was no future. You know, no one had become rich or famous from skateboarding. If anything, you got free gear, and by the time you reached an age of responsibility, you had to find a job. Right. So being in high school and being a skater was sort of double jeopardy because you weren't even on the radar of cool in terms of being a nerd. You know what I mean? Like you were subjected to ridicule because you still did this kiddie sport, or like you were still playing with yo-yos basically if you were skating. And so it was really hard to push through that as a formative teenager. And you know, I found my crew, and it was outside of school. And I kind of abandoned the whole idea that I'm going to be cool in school at all. Right.
That was the Bones Brigade, correct?
But but it was mostly the local friends that I skated with.
Okay.
And eventually became the Bones Brigade because Stacy Peralta, who was a legendary skater in his own right, started a company, and he cherry picked a team.
Right.
And I was one of those guys that got picked.
Right.
So eventually that was my crew because we were traveling together, and he threw us all in the mix. And, you know, we were from all different areas, well, mostly from California, but LA, San Jose, San Diego, and then a couple guys from Florida.
So he had like a AAU skate team.
Right. Yeah.
So like, what was his process of picking kids? Like, was it? Because you guys were fairly young when he picked you, correct?
Yeah, we were. I remember the first time he ever acknowledged me. We were at this one event in LA at the skate park at it was a bowl competition, and I was just sitting there watching practice, and he came up to me, and I was actually skating for Dogtown at the time. I got the tail end of Dogtown as the ship was sinking the first time.
Yeah. Just a little context. So Dogtown was like they were like the originators. For people that don't know, they're like the originators of
pool skating
and style skating.
Sure, and the culture.
Yeah, swag. Yeah,
absolutely. And so I was the sort of amateur on Dogtown at the time. And little did I know Dogtown was very quickly going out of business. But you know, I thought it was cool. I was on the team.
Yeah, for sure.
And he asked me how Dogtown was treating me, and I had no context of what it meant to be treated well. Right. So like, good, I guess I get skateboards from them. You know what I mean? Like, isn't that all there is?
Right.
But I realized at the time that he really had taken notice of me, and I was really young, and it was weird because, you know, I'm already an outcast as a skater in my teenage years. And then when I started skating and the sort of style I developed, it was more out of necessity because I was so scrawny that I figured out these sort of new ways to get airborne, which was literally ollieing into the air before grabbing your board. And that seems totally normal now, but at the time it was considered super weird and like dorky and circus trick. And so I got labeled as this, I can't explain it. I got labeled as a circus skater circus trick skater at the time. So I was an outcast in an outcast activity.
That's intense.
It was pretty intense. Like when I look back on it, I was like, Jesus, like I was in this little tiny bubble of what I thought was super cool. And then I was getting ousted from that. But like I said, I found my crew and I found people who were like-minded. But the thing about that is that Stacy took notice of it.
Right.
And he thought that there was something there. He thought that was progressive. And I didn't know at the time. Like I said, I was just doing it out of necessity.
Right.
So for him to see me, and then eventually he called me and he said, hey, I heard that Dogtown went out of business. No one called me and told me that. No one from Dogtown.
No more skateboards.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, maybe that's why I haven't gotten any skateboards in a while. And he said, I want to know if you want to come up here and talk about being on the Bones Brigade. And at the time, the Bones Brigade was the most elite team. And I was like, yeah, sure, if you really think I belong there.
Right. And so, the psychology of that was interesting to me because you're, like you said, you're like an outcast and an outcast. And then you had like pro skaters looking at your style like, this isn't it. Is that
Yeah. They basically said that I cheated. They were like,
what were you doing to make them feel so emotional?
In the I guess I was just young. I think I was just a threat.
Right. Okay.
But I think it was more that the style back then was more how gnarly are you? How much style? You know what I mean? And it was very much about bulk and you powered through your moves and like you grabbed your board and you pulled it up and it was more about muscling through tricks.
Right.
And I figured out a way that I could launch into the air without having to use my bulk.
Right.
And then by the time I was in the air, then I could reach down and grab my board. And the pros at the time were saying, well, that he cheats because he ollies into his airs and then he can just grab it anyway. And I was like, yeah.
Do it.
That's it. Like, that's what I'm trying to do. Mm-hmm. Why is that a bad thing?
Right.
And if you look at the way kids skate today, no one is grabbing their board before they actually are in the air.
Right.
That's just how it is now. But when I was doing it at the time, people were, I guess they were threatened by it, but they just thought it was this weird, like I was a cheater.
Yeah, that's crazy to me, man. How did you because you're going through and you get handpicked by what was his name again?
Stacy Peralta.
I apologize because he's a legend as well. But you get handpicked by them, and like when do you know like, okay, maybe I can make a career out of this? Like at what point did you know that this is
well,
something?
I think I got lucky in that I was naive enough and young enough to not consider that. When I got sponsored by Powell, I was 12 years old. When I got on the Bones Brigade.
Right.
I turned pro when I was 14. And that didn't when I say turn pro, all that meant was I was competing in another division and there was a chance you could win $150 for first place.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
right.
That was it. Like it wasn't some celebration or contract champagne. It was just like I ticked the box on the entry form to the competition of pro instead of amateur. That was it. Right. Like that's legit. And so I was young enough to not, you know what I mean? It wasn't that I was choosing a career. It was just like, this is awesome.
Right.
I get to skate and get free stuff, and sometimes I get to fly across the country. One time I got to go to Japan to do a TV show when I was 14.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and all that stuff was like, that was otherworldly. Like that was living the dream because no one had really created the dream yet.
Right.
So I think it was when I realized when I could make a living at it was when I got out of high school. Because then I was already making pretty good money. By the time I was a senior in high school, I had bought a house.
Oh, wow.
Because my dad said, you're making this money, you got to invest it. And, I was just like, what do you mean? I can go buy this cool camera, Sharp Image.
Right.
And so he, I was thankful that he did that, obviously. But then I realized as I was about to graduate high school, like, I'm making money. This is a living.
Right.
And I guess I don't have to try to figure out what is going to be my job. Yeah.
Right. It was, when I was watching the documentary, the Bones Brigade documentary, I'm looking at like there was this roller coaster effect about the skateboarding culture. Like it was up and then it was down, it was up and it was down. And you guys, I think the Bones Brigade and what you guys did catapulted it forward to like what it is today. It set the real foundation of like skateboarding as a business. But you did it from a place where like nobody believed what it was going to be. Nobody believed in it. And I'm not even 100% sure you guys knew what it could be. It was just like you guys loved doing it. And then you're like, we have a product and possibly kids across the country would like this product. So you put out a video, and that video is really what catapulted.
That was all Stacy.
Stacy?
Yeah, that was all his directive and his ideas. We were just stoked to be on the team,
right,
and we were following his lead. So it wasn't like we all were saying, you got to do a video. Right. You know, and videos weren't even a thing yet. I mean,
that's
like
what's
when
crazy,
we made the video, there were relatively few VHS machines in homes. Right. So it was kind of like, who is going to buy this?
Did he consciously have that business acumen, or was it just something?
Well, I think that it was much more in a more general sense, where he was like, if we make a video and people like to watch it, they'll want to buy the products.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it wasn't like he's making infomercial. Right. He just wanted to document what he saw every day in us that you wouldn't see when the only time you see us skating is in competition.
Right.
You know, there's no YouTube. There's no like video part. There was no videos.
Right.
So the only time you saw us skate is when we were in competition, and that was a different type of skating. It was a little more conservative.
Yeah.
And more strategy. And when he saw us really just on our own relaxing, he's like, I gotta get this. I gotta document this because this is what it's really about. This is the passion.
That's the serendipity to me about this whole thing is like, they just happen to have, like the Zephyr team, they just happen to have a photographer from Skateboard Magazine around at the time to document that stuff. And you guys just happen to have a
photographer that was just interested in them as personalities.
Right.
You know, and he saw something there, but it wasn't like there was this big master plan where it was like, we're going to get this team, we're going to get this photographer, and this is a movement.
That's the serendipity of it to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and so as you're going along in your career, and when did you know that you became a little more than just a cat on the Bones Brigade team?
Well, for sure, when I started doing well in competition and suddenly, I was getting recognized sometimes, which was super strange because I never set out to be rich or famous. You know what I mean? I didn't. A lot of people will get into, say, ball sports because they know that there is that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that can be had.
Right.
And for me, I never was trying to be famous. You know what I mean? And it was just like, wait, why do you know who I am?
Right.
But then I started having a really good streak of competition. I think after like the second year of being pro, I reached the top of the ranks. And I think that's when I realized that I have something, well, I at least have something special in terms of my discipline and my creativity. Mm-hmm. And then when Stacy started doing videos, I was like, oh, I want to do this.
Right.
Because then I can document tricks that I'm not going to do in competition because I know I can't make them every time.
Right.
But I have an outlet for documenting them and showing them to people and showing what I'm capable of. And that's when I got really excited about, I guess, being a pro skater.
Right.
Because the competition thing, it's awesome, but can't explain it. It's like, it's not a really good vehicle for creativity. And you got to keep upping yourself. And at some point I was just expected to win. Right. So judges were sort of judging me
by your past,
by what they think I could do, instead of against everyone else.
That's when you know you're a GOAT when you start competing against yourself.
Yeah, and it gets weird. And that whole adage, like it's lonely at the top. It was lonely because it was just like I just wanted to be one of the bros. Like I wanted to be on the deck and cheering everyone else on. And if someone else did good, that's awesome. And it just I got very isolated. And I got jaded on competition for a while.
That is, it's like you kind of fell victim to your guys' own marketing almost.
Yeah, and our success for sure. Yeah. And it's weird. I mean, it's like child actors or rock stars that when they're young, like you get so distorted, your perception of reality and how people treat you, and suddenly you just don't even know what is real anymore, or who is authentic.
Did you ever? I mean, what kind of struggles came from that?
I got jaded through competition. I had a heart-to-heart with Stacy, and I just said I don't want to compete anymore. It's really crushing morally, and and I'm not enjoying the skating, I'm just doing it because I have to kind of, and I want to take a break. And at the time you couldn't really choose a career path like that.
Right.
And he was very open with me and just saying, look, I understand this, but just so you know, like this could severely impact your career.
Right.
In terms of your income,
everything.
Your recognition. Like this might be kind of this is where the downfall of what you're doing here. And I just said, well, I have to at least pull back a bit. Mm-hmm. And I did. I pulled back from competition for a while. And when I came back to competition, I came at it with the attitude like, I don't really care if I win, and I'm going to take way more chances. And it's going to be more like I'm either killing it or I blew it. That was sort of my attitude, and that was liberating for me.
Right.
And I was only, I don't know, 19 at the time.
That's crazy to have all these thoughts at 19.
Yeah, but I did. I was just like, you know what? I've already done as much as I kind of want to do for competing, and I'd rather just go at it like this in this approach and, blow doors, like be way above everyone or way above what they think I can do, or just blow it. Yeah, that was pretty fun actually for a while.
It's an interesting dynamic because I think you're an outlier in the sense like that most of the legends of their craft are pushed by this
well, you don't want to taint your legacy.
Yeah, well, they're pushed.
I mean I understand that's how people view it.
Yeah,
it's just like I can't go out fading away.
Right.
I got to go out on top.
Right.
Or I always got to be on top, and that'll kill you.
Right, but I'm talking about more like the start, like what fueled you in the beginning, and it's the entire skate culture really at its foundation. It was never really fueled by any prominence. It was more just you guys wanted to be good at what you did for the sake of being good at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is totally opposite of like a football or basketball. It's like, I want to be Michael Jordan. I want to be, you guys are just like, I want to hit this trick. Kill it.
Yeah. And probably we were lucky in that sense that we were so sort of innocent and naive and no one had already carved that path.
Right.
Because then we would just be aspiring to that.
Yeah. But that's the brilliance of what y'all did though. Yeah,
it was a blast. I mean, it was all very experimental.
It definitely was. It definitely was. But you did shit like, so like I'm a young black kid from the ghetto, right? So your video games impacted my life, right? I remember that vividly. Like, let's play Tony Hawk, and I used to kill it. I used to grab it. It was a big part of my childhood. But like, you guys affected people globally on something that you were just. It was a passion for you.
Yeah, well, that was a whole different level of what I thought was possible, or how much reach I thought we could have.
Right.
When I set out, I mean, we're kind of fast forwarding, but when I actually got the opportunity to do a video game, I just said, I want to make this something that skaters are proud of. I want to make this something that a hardcore skater is going to be inspired to buy a PlayStation. That was the goal of the game for me.
Wow.
So it wasn't like I'm going to use this platform to reach a whole new audience and to make this a genre of video games. It was more like, I hope that skaters are proud of this, because anytime skating was represented in video games prior to that, it was super exploitive and cheesy, and It was 720 or skate or die. And I mean, we loved it because we had no other way to get in video games, but it was always just not representative of the true culture of it.
Right.
And so, I set out to pick a roster of skaters that I thought sort of represented all styles of skating, all different walks of life, and then spots that were mostly based in reality, and the tricks that are, and make it like skating, where you can free roam, you can skate, and you can create combos, and that was it. That was the goal.
Right.
And I know that I would say about a month before the video game release is when I realized that something else was happening with it. Because I could tell that Activision started ramping up what they were going to do to promote it.
Right.
And they were getting sort of early reviews of it. And I started giving it, I mean, in full disclosure, I was giving like pirated copies to friends of mine. And then they would, I don't know if you played PlayStation back then, but you had to sort of chip your PlayStation to play those games like that were burned discs.
Yeah.
So I would send it to friends of mine who I trusted, who I knew were gamers, who I trusted their input. And they just started calling it the game.
The game.
Yeah. And then there was this sort of vibe in the skate industry, like, have you guys played the game? And I was like, that was the proudest moment, because I was like, oh, we have made something that skaters are going to be hyped on.
No, you made the game.
Yeah. And then when Activision was releasing, just about to release it, they offered me a buyout of future royalties.
Oh, wow.
Which luckily other income started coming in, because I was, X Games were happening and I was getting other sponsors, and I was like, I don't really need to buy out from this. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather just let it ride. Which was absolutely the best financial decision of my life.
For sure. Yeah, no. So, well, let's backtrack a little bit then. How did that opportunity come about?
Around 1996, I got a call from a video game developer, a PC programmer, and he said, hey, I have a little engine for a skate game. I wonder if you would come help me pitch this to publishers. And so he and I went to all these different publishers and console manufacturers with a super crude PC, skater that was going in and out of pools and doing little basic tricks. And, it wasn't great, but it was for the time, it was
dope.
Yeah, it was okay.
Right.
He and I were going to all these pitch meetings, and then finally he gave up because he's like, look, I gotta make a living. I can't keep doing this. And and he said, but I think that maybe your name is now sort of the seed is planted for you in the video game industry, and people know you're wanting to do a game. And I was like, yeah, whatever that means. And then not long after that, I got a call from Take-Two, which is now Rockstar Games, Grand Theft Auto. Right. And they said they want to do a skate game. And then I got a call from Activision, and they said, hey, we're doing a skate game, and we would like your input. And I had to weigh those options. But when I went to Activision and saw what they were working on, I was like, this is it. This is like, just intuitively, this is the vibe of it. And it was funny because what I was playing when I first went there, they had made a game called Apocalypse starring Bruce Willis.
Okay.
And so I was playing with Bruce Willis on a skateboard with a gun on his back, going through like this desert wasteland and doing little tricks.
Right.
But it was there, you know what I mean? The vibe was there, like the flow, the controls, and I was like, this is the one I want to work on.
Right.
And I signed up pretty much that day.
Jesus, man. It's it's weird because like when people reach and obtain the level of success that you've had, it's usually like this ingenious, elaborate plan, whereas you're kind of just like moseying about. I mean, granted, you worked your ass off, don't get me wrong, but it's like you kind of just fell into these opportunities and took advantage of them when they came about.
I mean, for sure, there's a little bit of that too. I was hustling at the time though, mostly because like I had just started a family, and I had to, I had mouths to feed.
Right.
Like it was more out of pure, it wasn't desperation, but it was more necessity because I needed to go out and I wanted to keep skating. So that was it. It was like, how do I keep skating and how do I make a living? How do I support a family? Right. And so I was chasing every single opportunity. I mean, at one point, just before that, I was doing skate exhibitions in Six Flags parking lots, 3 a day for $100.
Jesus.
For $100 a day. And then I would like do that for about a week and come home. And
when was this?
Like 95, 96.
Man.
Yeah, so it wasn't rosy, but it was like I still got to skate and I still got to pay the bills.
It's such a California West Coast mentality. Like, it is what it is, man. I got to do what I got to do. I love it, man.
Yeah, well, I just didn't want to get a job. I guess that was it. What can I say?
Right. So like, when did you know you kind of became like the brand ambassador for skating? Because I mean, that's kind of what you had became.
I think it was around that time. Especially when the X Games came into play, like people already knew my name from the 80s success that I had. And I had never quit skating. And then all of a sudden the X Games came and it was like, oh, look what these guys are doing now.
Right.
Like, where have they been?
What was the start of the X Games? Like
95.
How did that get its...
The original one was called the Extreme Games. And it was ESPN's way to highlight all these random sports that they thought were all connected. Right. And when I mean that, they were talking about rock climbing, bungee jumping, sky surfing. You know what I mean? Right. None of these things were connected.
Right.
But it was their way to show all these fringe activities. And a lot of skaters were kind of against it because they were like, we're not whatever this is.
Right.
You know, this cheesy extreme thing. And I was like, well, yeah, but if we do this, you know, we'll get on TV and I feel like our vibe will shine through and sort of rise to the top of all this noise. And that's kind of what happened. I mean, between us and BMX and motocross, like those are the sports that started thriving, and all the other stuff, bungee jumping, like that just fell by the wayside.
I didn't even know that was on the junket.
I'm just saying, like that fell off of their competition thing because it was just more silliness than serious competition.
Right.
But yeah, it was. So I think that through that, people knew my name because they knew it from the past, and I was still active and I was still relevant. And then they just started looking to me to sort of speak on behalf of skateboarding.
Right.
And I never chose that. I wasn't, you know what I mean? I wasn't gunning for that, but I was happy to do it.
Right. And you did it. You did it well. I think that was the transition in like I said, skateboarding has kind of had this like roller coaster, and that shit has taken it to it took it to an entirely different plateau, to where it's the business that it is now, and you have multi-million-dollar companies all over the genre.
Yeah, it's all that stuff. You know, I never set out to be a businessman either.
Yeah, that's
so
funny.
that was, you know, and it was more like doing things by intuition and thinking, well, you know, we have, like, for instance, my siblings and I all had kids at the time, young kids, as skating started to be more prominent again. And we were like, we can't find any cool clothes for our kids. And I don't mean just skate clothes. I mean like any cool clothes. It was all Oshkosh bagosh and dressing them up like little soldiers, you know? And it was like, why can't we just have surf shorts and t-shirts? And so we just set out to do that. With hot clothing. That was it. You know, that was just more like, we saw this void and we took a chance and we ran out of my sister's garage for about a year, and
that's crazy.
Still going. You know, we're what is it? 20 years now.
Jeez, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's insane, man. That's what's interesting to me too, is because this whole thing is interesting to me, but how skateboarding kind of came out of this, like I said, kind of this like anti-culture culture, right? And then it became a corporation almost.
Yeah.
Did you get blowback from
always?
Like, what kind of? What was
well, so I guess the thing that set me up for all of that sort of pushback was growing up as an outcast in this outcast activity. You know, kind of like I already had a first wave of haters when I was 13 before social media.
You're used to the shit.
Yeah, and then I came through the fire, and then it was like, you're a sellout. And I was like, dude.
You can't win, man.
Like, okay, I'm a sellout. If you had offered me a McDonald's sponsorship when I was 14, I would have definitely taken it. You know, like, I'm still doing what I do. Exactly for the same reasons. It's just now stakes are higher, and people are paying more, and let's do it.
Yeah.
This is amazing. And so I think that was it. I was already hardened from my youth experience. And then that set me up for the newest wave of haters, which is social media.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm like,
that's a whole nother.
It is, but you know, I'm like, you guys don't even know. I've already used to hear this to my face. I'm good.
Right. Which they would never do on social media. That's crazy to me, man. How you, like I said, you just keep falling into these perfect circumstances. Yeah,
well, for sure there were some stumbles along the way, and I learned my lessons in the 80s about signing my rights away.
Right.
And
what happened with that?
I just, you know, people were offering contracts and guarantees, and I was like, yeah, sign away. I had no idea that all the contracts I was signing were actually conflicting with each other.
Oh yeah.
But that wasn't the main problem. The main problem was that all of a sudden these products started coming out that were just garbage with my name on it. And at one point I went to one of the companies and I was like, you can't make this? And they're like, yeah, we can.
Wow.
You signed your name.
Wow.
We have the rights.
Did you have like a business mentor?
I didn't know. I didn't know what I was doing, you know, and like, I wasn't running every contract through lawyers anyway. I was just, woo.
Right.
10 grand? Yeah, I'll take it. Sure. What are we doing?
That's insane. But it's so predatory of those companies and so indicative of
yeah. Well, and it was all very 80s too. You know what I mean? It was that sort of, that mindset. Luckily there wasn't YouTube and social media back then. So I survived it relatively unscathed, but I feel like I did get lucky in that I made my main mistakes then and set myself up for the next wave of success where I held control over my likeness and my imagery and how skating was promoted. Wow.
You took your lumps on the chin. So what do you think about this day and age in skating and what's the future of it? Because it's huge now. Like it's about to be an Olympic sport in 2020. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's exciting. I love the growth of it. I love that it's just another thing kids can choose to do wherever they're from. You know, like with my foundation as well, we're helping to provide skate parks in low-income areas. Like there's a world-class skate park in Compton, and kids can just choose to skate as well as play basketball or whatever else they do. And so for that's really exciting to me. But in terms of going forward, I like the idea that, the Olympics, you know, it definitely has its issues, you know, and there are a lot of elements that come with that people don't think are positive. But
like what?
Well, you know, just the idea that it's somehow conforming to this team sport ethos and that we have to somehow tame what we do or censor it or, you know, like there's all that stuff as well. And how do you make it? And also like the people that are going to run the sports, they're not experienced in skateboarding because who's going to
judge it and stuff like that.
Yeah, all that stuff it gets messy, right? But at the core of that, you're going to see skate teams from the most unlikely places. Right. And so that's exciting to me. Like I've been to a few of these places, but I know that there's going to be a solid skate team from Ethiopia. There's going to be a solid skate team from Cambodia.
That's crazy.
That's crazy, right? South Africa.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so for them to have this international venue to show how truly worldwide skateboarding has become, that's exciting to me.
100%.
And it's going to only grow from there.
Yeah. That's I guess you're always going to have that juxtaposition of like that notion of selling out and keeping it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think that for a lot of people, the Olympics are the apex of selling out.
Man, I don't understand that mentality though, because it's
but I think that they just don't realize that it's not going to be choreography and goofy costumes and ice skating. You know what I mean? It's going to be snowboarding is the highlight of the Winter Games now.
100% it is. Yeah.
That's what skateboarding is going to be for Summer Games. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
I mean, it already has the cool factor.
100%.
And you know, the audience isn't getting any younger. Like, how many more swim events can you have? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No. So is there anybody like who you have knighted as the one? That's
for skating?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, if Nigel Houston stays on the path he's on,
right?
He's a machine,
right?
You know, as far as the street goes. For the bowl, that's tricky because there are so much talent coming up right now,
right?
From a lot of different countries, and in 2 years are going to be killing it, or in 2 years there's going to be a whole new batch of them. Yeah. So I can't really judge that one too hard. I know there's a few people that are kind of guaranteed to get in it. There's this kid Keegan Palmer from Australia.
Okay,
he'll be in it.
So your son skates too, right?
Yeah, all my kids skate, but my oldest son is a pro skater.
Yeah. And what's that like seeing your little man out
It's
there?
fun. It's it's super fun. He loves doing it, not because of me, and he loves sort of carving his own path and way outside my shadow. So it's fun for me to see him embrace it and make it his own.
Right. It's a big ass shadow though.
Yeah. Well, it actually discouraged him for a while from doing it.
I mean,
there were a couple of years when he was a teenager, he just couldn't deal with the attention that it brought him.
Because you're Tony Hawk's son. Like,
it got weird.
Tough. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of advice did you pass along? Because the the crazy thing about skating to me is like each era takes it to a new, like in basketball or football, it's like you score touchdowns, you score points. But like in skating, it's like you're inventing new ways to do the culture.
I think it was my best advice to him was at the time when he was sort of wavering on skating at all, he started riding motocross a lot and started talking about how he's going to get sponsored possibly and all these, big goals for motocross that he just didn't have the resources to do it. Like in terms of the support from me or his mom,
right.
We couldn't bring him to the track all the time. Like we couldn't, it just wasn't in the cards.
Right.
And in all honesty, he wasn't that good at it. He was all right.
right.
You know what I mean? But he wasn't some prodigal motocross rider at age 13.
Right.
And I had a heart-to-heart with him around that time. And I said, Riley, I know you want to do these things in motocross, and I know you're enjoying it. But if you really want to make a career of something at an early age, you're exceptional at skateboarding. Like for your age, it's not just because you're my son. Like you are really good at skating. And if you wanted to chase that, I think that's where you could make some success much sooner. And you don't have to ride for my companies. You know what I mean? Like you can just do your own thing.
Yeah.
And I think he took that to heart and he started skating full time and got his own set of sponsors and eventually quit Birdhouse, which was my company.
Right.
But I wanted him to, you know what I mean? Like he needed to.
It wasn't a loss of asset. It was senior.
Yeah, and also and the team he got on was widely regarded as the most elite street team, and so for them to recognize him only on his merit was big.
Is there any like under? Because like all I could do is kind of liken it to hip hop, right? Because hip hop started in the '80s, and it was this, it was the voice of the youth, and it branched out and got commercialized, and it is what it is today. And like, there's this subculture of hip hop that's like, kind of like y'all like kind of like what you dealt with, like you're selling out. Is there that culture in skating as well?
Oh, sure, yeah. And there's, there always will be that culture in skating, and that's what I love about it.
Right.
There's always going to be the rebellious attitude and the like, we're going to go skate the forbidden spots and the handrails and risk getting kicked out and arrested just for the sake of sort of not breaking the law, but pushing limits.
I mean, breaking the law.
And breaking the law. Yeah.
But that's beautiful. Cause what I kind of fell in love with, like just digging into this topic, was that aspect of it. That it came out of like looking at rural areas, broken down areas, and saying, "Yo, that is a tool." And
that's a skate park.
Yeah, and
for sure.
And it was beautiful.
Well, that's how street skating started, especially in the late '80s, early '90s. All skate parks were closing, or they were just too expensive, or the liability was too much. And then kids were like, well, "What about these stairs over here and this ledge and these banks? Like, let's just go skate."
Yeah, it's like I said, the video you guys made. That from the Bones Brigade, really highlighted that, and I think what to me, in my opinion, what made it so marketable was that you guys showed your mistakes on camera. You guys showed you guys falling to where it's like the average person is like, they're not superhuman. I can do it too. They fuck up as well, but it's like it's a psychological thing too. Whereas you don't ever see your Superman bleed, and you guys allowed that to be shown.
Yeah. And I think it was just more Stacey wanted to promote the fun too.
Right.
It was just goofy. I mean, nowadays,
that's what I'm saying. Like
nowadays, the falls are a whole business on YouTube.
Right. It is.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Is like you guys kind of just frolicked into the brilliance. It was really what happened.
Yeah, but that's also that I got to credit Stacey with that.
Right.
We didn't know, you know what I mean? We didn't know that would be the fun highlights.
Right.
Like we were trying to do our best stuff.
Oh, it's brilliant. We didn't want to fuck.
Yeah,
no, for sure. Well, because that's definitely an aspect of it, like the injury side. Like I played professional football, so I had over 14 surgeries.
Yeah.
Like what kind of injuries did you sustain over the years?
A lot of sprains, a lot of stitches. My worst was I broke my pelvis.
Jesus.
Yeah, that was next level. I didn't realize how debilitating that would be.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
Yeah, I mean that's it. You're just laid up.
Yeah, you can't go
for months.
Anywhere.
Yeah. And then to try to regain not just my balance, but my my confidence.
Yeah,
that was the hardest thing. Like I spent a good year relearning tricks, not because I couldn't do them, but just because I was afraid of them.
That shit's tough, man.
Yeah,
because when you have an injury in football, that's the thing that keeps you from coming back faster. Is that mental, like, can I push off on?
Yeah, well, luckily we're not beholden to a season either. So
yeah,
you know, you kind of do it at your own pace. But my best way of healing was just get back out there as soon as I could, even if it was like just on a small scale, but just to get moving and trying. You know, that was it.
That's why I loved reading about this. I loved watching the documentaries. I've always known about skating. It never really impacted my life like that because I've tried. I can ollie. I could do that. I think that's just because I'm an athlete.
Yeah.
But
that doesn't mean you can ollie. But that's good that you learned it. Yeah, because I've seen some athletes that cannot ollie.
Sure. I guess what it was like when I was younger. One of my buddies had an older brother, and we always played that video game, but two, he was really into like street skating. He would skate all over the city, and he had those videotapes, and so he used to let us. Well, he used to take his skateboard and do it out back, and I just learned and I never forgot. But that was what was so, like I said, it was beautiful to me is how you guys turned a city into art. What do you think is like? I mean, not what do you think, but what else is Tony Hawk? Because like, you're a legend in skating, so like, what else do you like to do? Because I never.
You know, I have a lot of kids, and I'm trying to be much more available to them these days because I was on a tear of touring and chaos for a long time just because of the success and what I thought was, you know, chasing the dream. And at some point, it was like, no, the dream is really having love of family, and so I'd say in the last. Definitely 5 years or so, I've made much more effort to be available and to include them on all this stuff. So that's my priority is being a parent for sure. But other than that, like if we can break away from the kids, my wife and I love to travel, and we go to all kinds of odd places like Iceland and Cambodia and Thailand and stuff like that. And so I think I've developed that wanderlust from touring, and it was never something that I aspired to do. Like when I was a kid, I didn't want to leave San Diego. I mean, you know what I mean? Everything was weird.
It's a beautiful city.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like I just like going to Europe was like, ew, what do they eat here?
Right.
I can't get ice from my Coke. Like,
and they put that's the first time
they put butter on all the sandwiches. Like, yeah.
And they put what is it? Carbonated water. What is that? Sparkling water.
Oh, sparkling water.
Never had that before.
In Germany, I had sparkling iced tea. That was the nastiest.
I can't even.
but like I said, through the years, I've learned to really embrace that and to want to discover more. So I really enjoy that and food. I hate the word, but yeah, I'm a full foodie. Like I'm looking for tasting menus and all that stuff when I travel.
What I like the word though, man. Cool.
I enjoy fine food. I'd rather say that.
There you go, man. A lot more syllables. But what have you learned throughout this process, man? Because like looking at it outside as just a fan, it's interesting to see the dynamic of a highly successful human being that was never really necessarily the goal, you know? And so what have you learned about yourself throughout this process?
That through all of this, it was always my passion for skating, especially in the sort of heyday, you know, celebrity years. The skating was always the priority, and sometimes I got distracted from that.
Right.
And I hated that there was any distraction. And especially in my youth, like when I was coming up as a teenager and suddenly we had some fame, we had some celebrity and success, I saw a lot of my friends fall into that trap and lose themselves and not be able to skate. Yeah. And I was always like, I'm not going that direction. Right. Because I want to keep skating. I want to keep getting better at skating. And I did it through the deadest times. So what I learned about it was that I have strong discipline, but also I just couldn't let go of my passion. And none of this was a springboard for other things.
That's true.
You know what I mean? It wasn't like, all right, now I can be an actor. Or now I can be a rapper. Like, no.
Yeah.
That was never the goal, was to get into these other industries. It was more because I just love skating and just how to be more effective with my, I guess, influence and time.
Right.
And choosing the right projects to get involved with. I mean, that, all that stuff, like, no one can really teach you that.
Yeah.
It's hard. You gotta vet things. You gotta experience the bad side of them, and the exploitive side of them before you realize what's real and how you can be effective.
Right. I mean, that's what's so rare to me about this sport and what it was that I continually say it's not something that was started like in its inception from any kind of other motivation than just being really good at what you do. So as you're, how old are you now? Not to put you out on
49.
Blast, 49 years old. Congratulations, man. A lot of
For
people
making it there.
A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't make it there, man.
I hear you.
But as you're 49 years old, because like I had to deal with it a lot younger. Like I walked away from football at 30 years old, and so as a 30-year-old man, I can't play something that I love since I was 7 years old. And luckily, I had the wherewithal to be interested in to study other things while I was in it or even previous. But that transition was really smooth for me because I didn't tie up all my worth in my profession. Although as if I was younger, I probably would have. But you get to do it through 49 years old. Do you see an end? Like, do you
yeah, for sure. I'm not living in a fantasy world. Like, I know that I won't be able to do this stuff for that much longer,
right,
in terms of being a relevant or professional or doing exhibitions and
right,
things like that. But I think it's just more that I'm comfortable with being able to pull back from the spotlight and still cruise, like with my kids, or to help foster younger kids that are coming up and give them some insight and direction with my experience. I think I went through that sense of uncertainty of self-worth a couple years ago when my sponsors just started dropping like flies. And it was all because of economy.
Right.
It wasn't because they didn't believe me. It was just more like, hey, we don't have the budget. We don't have the dollars to keep doing this. And that's when I had to really go through this sort of self-awareness that it was like, well, am I not good anymore?
Right,
like, am I okay? And it was like, no, I love this. I'll keep doing it. I don't care. I'll do it for free. I would have done it for free anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like all through these years, if I was able to and not make money, I would have been doing it. I still would.
Right.
And when you sort of make that realization, you're like, everything's just gravy after that. And it's fun. And yeah, I'll keep riding this wave as long as I can, but I'm not going to be like holding on by a thread. Like, no, go look at me,
right.
And I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do it just for the sake of tradition.
Right. No, I mean, I see it all the time though, man. Like, especially in my sport, like you see guys hanging on or you see guys transition out and they're just like depressed and
yeah, you lose yourself because that was your identity.
Yeah.
And you've got to make those moves before it all ends in terms of what else you could possibly do or how you view yourself.
Do you wrap up some of your identity in, because it's different for me. Like I started when I was 7, ended when I was 30, so that's 23 years of football, but I never really tied myself. I used to hate when people used to identify, you're a football player, and I never really, like if I went somewhere, I would never like, hey, I'm Arian. I never really did that. I never really tied myself into, but
no, I'm a professional skateboarder.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
through,
you're different.
Or
like,
skateboarder is fine, but a lot of people want to say, like if they're introducing you at an event or something, like, what should we say? I'm like, pro skater. That was the video game, right? Tony Hawk Pro Skater. That's me. I'm still that.
Right. No, man, that's beautiful. I think that perspective is, I think it's lacking in today's society. I think the people can look at themselves in the mirror and be okay. Yeah,
well, it just the whole idea it's just about the fame. Be famous for what?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And in today's society, especially on social media, you can just be famous because you're famous.
Yeah,
because you're hot.
So weird.
And that stuff doesn't last. Especially being hot.
That's true.
And that stuff, that's just short-lived and it's not fulfilling and it's dangerous. I really believe that. I think it's dangerous to kids to think that that's what they should aspire to. So I think that, the success will come if you're passionate and if you really have the discipline and you really keep challenging yourself. And yeah, you got to put yourself out there. You got to hustle a bit, but don't make that the end goal.
Right.
Just enjoy the ride. Because that's what I did through those years. Is I really didn't. I got caught up in all the hype, and I failed to enjoy the ride for a few years, and I regret that for sure.
Yeah. You regret it?
Yeah, just because, like I said, I kind of lost myself in it and lost touch with my kids a little bit through their formative years, and I would have been much happier and much more effective if I just sort of realized that early on.
Right. I was.
But it's crazy, all of a sudden I was getting invited to all these award shows and hey, we'll pay for you and someone else to go to Paris for the weekend to go to this charity event. I'm like, yeah,
absolutely.
That's what I got to do.
No, for sure. Because I mean,
play golf. I don't play golf, but yeah, let's do that.
We have to. Yeah. That's the thing about. That's why I'm not sure if I have any regrets too, because I went through a lot of that same thing where I kind of got lost in the hype. I get lost in the fame and the money. But I'm not sure if I have a regret about it.
Well, it was a learning. I think I just let it go a little too long. That's my point. I don't regret it because I learned so much from it.
Doing it,
yeah, and I learned so much from it, and maybe I followed that road a little too far at some point.
Right.
But for sure, even like breaking my pelvis, I don't regret that.
Right.
Sure. That taught me this huge lesson in terms of how much I love skating, how much I want to get back into it, even when I'm unable to do it, and to don't take it for granted.
Right. No, for sure, man. I never see you, and I could be wrong, but do you try to stray away from like political discussions and things like that? I'm not going to corner you. I'm just asking.
I mean, it's just. I don't know. I appreciate the people that do take a stand, and that's what they believe in, and and I just never felt that strongly about. I just don't think that I'm the guy that's going to move the needle on issues, and the pushback on that is so hard that sometimes it's just not worth it.
No, I feel you.
Which is
a lot of guys have the same perspective.
Like shut up and dribble, that kind of stuff. I love that there's pushback on that, but I don't want to be that guy that's caught in that shitstorm.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely you definitely walking the plank for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like certain other sports, especially basketball or football, are more earmarked for the kind of firestorm.
Right.
Especially from our president.
That
stuff. If I was playing, then I probably would stand up and be like, no.
No,
this is what this is really about. Like this protest, this is what it means. You are completely twisting it.
Right.
Skateboarding, we're not really on that radar.
Right. No,
luckily,
it's probably because of there's no I guess the notoriety as far as how consistent. There's seasons, like you said, you're not really beholden to a season. So it's football and basketball are always there, whereas you guys are kind of like independent contractors almost.
Yeah, and skateboarding has always been considered irreverent.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's not supposed to fall into some cookie cutter or some sort of team scenario, little league type of stuff. And so I think that's been probably an advantage to me.
Right. No, for sure. So you're more viewed as artist / athlete rather than just
maybe.
Athlete.
Yeah. And I just, I have concerns with the direction of the country and the administration and all that stuff, but it's just not. It's not what I'm interested in getting and debating on.
No, for sure.
Because you're just going to lose. I mean, even the Parkland kids are getting heat. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a
how can you know what I mean? That just shows you, all right, if you're going to stand up for yourself, guess what?
Yeah.
Heat's coming no matter what.
From all directions.
From all directions, yeah.
I think that it's the climate we're in, social media. Everybody's trying to be famous. Everybody has an opinion, and everybody is right.
And everyone is going to tear you down.
Yeah.
If you speak up.
Yeah. So what's your advice to parents out there, parenting them in this social media age?
Oh, man. The advice to parents, I think... I don't want to say limit, but maybe, the age of your kids, you might want to be concerned about them being in full public view. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and like all of her stuff is private.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's, she doesn't get hundreds of likes on her photos, but
it's crazy that there's a concern nowadays, like a lot of people's self-worth is tied up in their social media presence.
There's some creeps out there.
Super creeps. Yeah, like my daughter.
They'll come find you too. Yeah. So like, no.
My daughter came up to me probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and she had this whole little like layout, this spiel. She's like, I want to start a YouTube page, and she like all she does is like plays with her horses. It's the cutest thing ever. But I'm just like, yeah, you can, but like listen, like the internet is not full of nice people. Like, so I'm gonna monitor it. Like you said,
yeah, well, that's the same thing. My daughter wanted to start one for her. What was everyone was making that slime stuff a while back? Did your kids get into that?
Gak?
No, they were like, but people were, the parents right now are listening. They'll be like, oh yeah. I'm it was making your own type of GAC stuff.
I don't have no idea.
That became a thing.
Right.
I mean, it was massive. And she wanted to make a YouTube channel of making the slime. And I was just like, yeah, here's the deal. It's got to be anonymous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't say your name, can't show your face.
Yeah. Especially people who their parents have a following. Like
that's a bummer.
Yeah, because
I mean, there's the good and the bad. There's stuff that we get to do that's crazy. I get to take her to Nickelodeon premieres and stuff like that. And
see the origination of GAC.
That's amazing. Yeah, and then there's the downside of that where it's just like you're on display. People are shooting. Like we arrive in LAX, people are shooting photos.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Creepy.
It's craziness. Like sometimes, like my daughter.
I don't mean like regular people. I mean like people who are paid to shoot photos and sell the photos.
Worse. Yeah, I don't got it like you. I'm glad. I mean, no offense, but I'm glad I don't got it like you. I get recognized every now and then, and my daughter always asks like, why do these people always ask you to take pictures? And it's hard for them to understand. But you got it like TMZ following you around and shit.
Yeah, like we there was a while back we were on the beach in Hawaii and there was some dude lurking in the bushes, I guess, and
creepy,
showed up on this thing. I was like, what? And then we were with another family, and so there's pictures of me with their kids, and like Tony Hawk with his kids. I'm just like, dude,
it's just so
at least get it right if you're gonna do it.
Right. Those are my kids. Yeah, that's just so weird. It's just a weird society we live in, man. But man, listen, I appreciate you driving down here, man. It was super inconvenient.
Oh, I appreciate you including me. No, it's no problem.
Man, you're a legend, man. So, like I said, man, I appreciate what you did for your culture, and like I said, you're a big part of my childhood. Like we all appreciate you, man. You're a legend, bro.
Oh, thank you very much.
No, for sure, man. So we end the podcast the same way every time, man. So we're trying to get Jim Carrey to come on the podcast, man. So we ask all our guests to try to lobby for me to get Jim Carrey on, man.
Okay.
So just look in the camera and try to get Jim on, man.
Okay. Hey, Jim Carrey, it's Tony Hawk. Remember, we hung out a couple times. You rode the electric skateboard. So I think that maybe you owe me one to go on Arian's podcast.
There it is.
Kinda. I think you'll enjoy it, though. For real. So come on, Jim, let's do it.
My man, I appreciate it, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Hawk, I appreciate you, brother.
All right. Thank you.
Much love.